1 week later. Split. Where are you? Who are you? As luck would have it, just as Kunigisa and I had originally planned, we were able to return to the mainland in the afternoon, exactly 1 week after we had arrived. Kunigisa having a tendency, albeit not as compulsive as her vertical motion thing, to hate changing plans once she's made them, this set me at ease a bit. But if you look back, Kudigisa's original purpose for coming to the island was, at least in part, to satisfy her interest in the various things that had occurred there in the past. I asked her about it. My investigation's basically over, she said. It seemed she had been up to some various things herself. Not that I wasn't wondering what she had been up to, but if that was the case, there was no problem for now. I just wanted to get home anyway. I sat on a sofa in the room on the same cruiser that had brought us to the island. Kunigisa lay sleeping on the sofa across from me. Now that we set off to return to the mainland, I had half expected something to happen with Hikari-san or Hikari-san, but they gave me nothing more than the usual dutiful formalities. Thank you very much. Please visit again if you have the chance. Take care now. I don't even have to get into Teriko-san's farewell. She left me without a single word, as if to say, I've already spoken to you enough to last a lifetime. But whatever. That's how my life goes. Soniyama Akane-san and Sakaki Shinya-san, the two perpetrators of this crime, were of course no longer allowed to stay on the island, and were currently laying low in the next room. I didn't know what they might be talking about. We were headed back to the mainland as planned, and they were heading back because they'd been kicked out. It was technically the opposite of being island exiled, but if you thought about it, the word mainland is wholly subjective. Yayoi-san and Maki-san remained on the island. Yayoi-san's doubts regarding Irie-san and Rei-san seemed to be swept away, but I wondered if that was enough. Of course, it was up to Yayoi-san to decide how she lived her own life, and not my place to butt in. As for Maki-san, that woman was a sly fox to the very end. So how much did you really know? I asked her before leaving the island. Maki-san responded with an ambiguous smile. Well, you know, maybe I don't really know anything. Like the whole thing was really just an act. You know, I get the impression you knew about Akane-san and Shinya-san's plans all along, and you were aiding them in creating alibis. What if I was? She said nonchalantly. What if I was? Then you're accomplice. That's all. But it's not like I had heard anything from Shinya-san, and he didn't try and tell me anything. If he had, you would have been abetted a murder. You invited him over 2 nights in a row, helping him create an alibi that was hard for me to trace. So, what's the real story? If you were really cooperating with Shinya-san, then what? Nothing. I guess nothing would happen, I shrugged. Nothing at all. Maki-san snickered at me. In reality, I wanted to tell her something, but there was no point. If she really possessed those powers, there was no need to say anything. And even if she didn't, there was no need. It's just that I had doubts. Shinya-san and Akane-san's serial murder plot just seemed too perfect, like it relied on too many coincidences. In presenting my findings to Irie-san, I had made great efforts to step around that. It's not that their plans had been sloppy, it was like they'd been unrehearsed, yet at the same time, everything had been prepared ahead of time. Or rather, it felt like luck was very much on their side. Yeah, it was like they'd factored in coincidences and made friends with luck, as if the layout of the entire island and everything on there was on their side. Nonsense, huh? Of course, they probably were all just coincidences, and probably just examples of the law of great numbers, and those two had simply won a bet, so to speak. Anything will look fishy if you think about it selectively. Occam's razor. However, on that island was someone who knew everything, and I do mean everything, even the future. Was even this a coincidence? Indeed, it probably was. I could draw no other conclusion. Even if it wasn't a coincidence, it was all over already, and there was no way to prove it. Plus, Shinya-san and Akane-san sure weren't talking, so there was no point in pursuing it. Even if there was a point, it had nothing to do with me, and even if it had something to do with me, I wasn't interested. So, that was the situation. Instead, I asked a question. Are you the one who told Teriko-san I was in trouble? There was no reason anyone should have known that I was about to be done by Akane-san in Yayoi-san's room, and thus there was no reason Teriko-san should have conveniently busted in with all the grace and good timing of an action heroine like that. Unless there was someone who could predict the future, that is. Do you think I would do something like that? No. Then I probably didn't, did I? She gave me a wicked smile. I decided any further inquiry would be meaningless, so I didn't even thank her. There was no reason to. I wonder what's going to happen now. To the island. To Irie-san. Maki-san gave an expectedly short response. I shrugged once. Well, how about telling me what's going to happen to me and Kunigisa? As a continuation to that compatibility reading from the other night, are the two of us going to stay like this forever? My readings are expensive. In that case, I'll have to decline, I said. The two of you will stay like that for a little while longer, she said, answering me the very second I had given up. What a perverse contrarian. A little while? Yes. A little while. How long? 2 years, plus change. I tilted my head at her. You mean it'll turn something else after 2 years? Or it'll completely fade away? Well, I don't know. She laughed a bit cynically. I can't see more than 2 years into the future. I hadn't heard that before. I probably failed to hide my surprised expression. It's a secret, though, she continued. I don't know what will come of you and Kunigisa-chan 2 years from now. You mean that's the limit of your power? I mean I'm going to die, she said plainly. Time is not on my side. As far as I'm concerned, all time stops at that point. 2 years from now, on March 21st, 3:23 p.m., that's the date and time that I will die. All I could do was be silent, spewing guts and brains all over the place. It'll be a fitting death for a heretic like me. Can't you avoid it? When the time comes, be sure to get my killer, just like you did this time. I'm asking you now as a favour. What's the point in asking a favour if you won't be able to see whether or not I've fulfilled it? That's true, she seemed to say as she stuck out her right hand, her chest out as if to express pride that she, too, had an unforeseeable future. Let's shake hands. Sure, might not be bad to pretend that we're friends now that we're at the very end. Even having said that, I couldn't grab her hand. I still had no idea why she picked on me so much. It probably didn't matter, and it was probably actually better that way. However, I still had some doubts. Excuse me. The cabin door opened, and in walked Rei-san. We'll be docking soon. Please get ready. Sure, I replied. Time to wake up Kunigisa. She seemed to be sleeping awfully comfortably, so I didn't really want to, but I couldn't just leave her be, although that would have been pretty funny. Thank you so much for everything, Rei-san took the time to say. You especially. We're grateful to Kunigisa as well, but you... Did you have a blast, Akagami Irie-san? Sure. Rei-san nodded, without any particular sign of surprise. You bet. I had tons of fun. Akagami Irie-san grinned a genuinely happy grin. A smile she hadn't given once during a performance as Rei-san. This wasn't acting, it was real. It was a real human smile. How do you know Rei and I switched? Since when? I just thought of it now. It was just a wild guess. I figured if I was wrong, you'd just get a little ticked off. It wasn't like a breach of your human rights or anything, I said to her. If you had left this room quicker, I probably wouldn't have even noticed, or at least I wouldn't have said anything. Is that right? She nodded. I always get sloppy at the end, huh? My grandfather used to say that all the time. But you must have had some reason to think that. Please, enlighten me. What is it to you? I can use it as future reference. She's going to keep doing this? Well, yeah, Yoi-san still hasn't noticed. Plus, Maki-san, well, I don't know about her, she snickered. Seeing her childish demeanour, she seemed to lack a certain refinement in comparison to the real Irie-san. The one on the island. Rei-san, that is. It was like the fake version was more real than the real one. She just seemed to be very free. Well, let's see, I said. You didn't talk very much, did you, Irie-san? It was so natural. I'm sure you thought as if you spoke you'd give yourself away, but, on the other hand, not talking at all was just as much of a blunder. So you made Teriko-san act silent as well to create a sort of universal lack of presence, thereby covering yourself. No, that's just her nature, Irie-san said. I can tell her apart from the other two even if she's not wearing glasses, 'cause she never talks. Apparently that was her nature. Well, if you thought about it, it didn't really seem like Teriko-san had been acting. Is that right? Well, either way, I figured that if Irie-san was the imposter, there was only one possible person it could have been. After all, Akari-san, Hikari-san, and Teriko-san are triplets. I guess it's a little counterintuitive that they couldn't have swapped places because they're triplets. You said it, she smiled. It was the smile of someone addressing an equal. At least, that's what I thought. And then there was something about your aura. Like, Terika-san never seemed to be doing much work. That's because she was mainly your bodyguard. But I never saw Rei-san do much work either. I was wondering about that. I poured your tea, didn't I? Yeah, it was great. I'd forgotten to thank her earlier. Oh, yeah, and also, the first time I visited your room, you were sitting on the sofa, and Irie-san was standing. It seemed like it should have been the other way around. My. I suppose Rei-san had been copying such mannerisms all along, but there was nothing like the real thing. Go on. Right, where was I? If you thought about it, Akari-san and Hikari-san obviously knew about the switch, which meant they too were quite a pair of little actresses. Especially Hikari-san. As spry and pitiable as she was, I would never have guessed that she was lying all along. Somebody owed her an Oscar. The nail in the coffin was when the fake Irie-san covered for you. The night Irie-san and Nisioisin were together talking all night. Makes sense, right? Rei-san was probably asking for a culinary advice. She's really a maid, after all, so it wouldn't be that strange if she'd been interested in cooking. Yeah, Nisioisin believes Rei is me, so she doesn't spend much time with the real me. That was my miscalculation, she sulked. And hey, come to think of it, where does Rei get off imitating me like that? I don't change my clothes in front of random people, and my personality isn't that crappy. Apparently her personality wasn't that crappy. Sounded like another lie to me. So what were you really doing that night anyway? That's a secret. It's a secret? A lady never discloses her evening affairs, she said mysteriously. I had a feeling that if I pressed any further it would just tick her off, so I decided to let it go. I wasn't looking for any more trouble. I didn't like making waves after all. Anyway, even though Irie-san did nothing to protect Hikari-san, even treating her like a criminal, she went as far as lying to save your hide. Why? Because Rei-san is closer to Irie-san than Hikari-san is. Maybe. But something about that answer doesn't float my boat. Leaving the deserted island like that, I would think that you'd get pretty close and cozy, and I don't think human beings are such a cold species. That's true, Irie-san said. Those girls are like my family, my precious family, who stayed by my side even after I was exiled. And the reason for that exile. Even so, Irie-san protected Rei-san, but not Hikari-san. Why? Could it be because Rei-san was really her superior, someone she had sworn allegiance to? I clapped my hands together. Something like that, right? You're marvellous. I want to hug you. I don't mind. I will refrain, she giggled innocently. This time, I have a question. Why exactly did you switch places with Rei-san and pose as a maid? Was it because, as the granddaughter of the Akagami family, you couldn't show yourself unguarded in front of guests, even though you were exiled? There was no guarantee that there wasn't some unsavoury individual mixed in with all those geniuses. As our prior investigator indicated, sometimes these things can happen. Thus, she prepared an imposter, a body double. Was that it? But Irie-san shook her head daintily. Nope, she said. I just wanted to see who'd notice first. Just a little prank. No reason, really. A prank. It was the kind of lie that made your knees wobble. And I didn't think she was lying this time. And until now, not a single one of those so-called geniuses has caught on. In all these years, unnoticed by anyone, geniuses are nothing special. Perhaps that was what Irie-san thought, and she would probably continue to think so. But you noticed. If you hadn't gone a little too far in the end there, I wouldn't have. Even if I had noticed, I wouldn't have said anything. You should have stayed at the mansion instead of coming to the boat with us. Well, I have to go apologise to Aikawa-san for the unnecessary hoopla. There's still a visit scheduled. We're not going to meet straight after dropping you off. Oh, Aikawa-san's going to be ticked. Not a person you want to see angry, even though it's inevitable. Plus, well, you showed me such a good time after all. It's an honour. Say, she said sweetly, won't you return to the mansion sometime? Kunigisa-san, Maki-san, Yuyoi-san and you. I think you'd make a terrific family. I hear you've taken a liking to Akari and Hikari. I don't mind letting you have your way with them. That's not the kind of thing you say to a family member. True, but I'm serious. I'm always serious. So how about it? Like, my proposition. She stuck her tongue out at me. At this point, I was becoming disgusted. I couldn't just write this off as free-spiritedness, or vibrancy, or lack of restraint. I don't like murderers. Irie-san laughed. I don't know why she was laughing. Regardless of their reasons? Regardless of their reasons. She nodded. I'm not sure what you heard from Hikari and Terika, but you can't possibly be thinking that they told you anything but the truth. Those girls are generally liars. I think the fact that they never told you about me and Ray's switch is proof of that. Eh? The reason I didn't call the police was simply because it wouldn't have been any fun that way. Absolute authority is unromantic, she said as she rolled up her left sleeve and revealed a lovely, perfectly unscarred arm. Please excuse me then, she said, with a smile, and left the room. Hey. Sure, didn't see that coming. What was real and what was fake? Who was real and who was fake? It's a mixed up world, and I for one never claim to know anything. Nor do I think all people are honest and all things are as they seem. What was it? The truth. Man, what a load of tomfoolery. It wouldn't have been long now. I thought to wake up Kunigisa, but seeing her peaceful face as she mewed like a kitten made me lose the motivation. It wouldn't be too late to wake her up after we reached the coast. The rule of thumb is, the longer you can stay dreaming, the better. Nevertheless, family. Man, I'm going to start regretting turning down that proposition. I said to no one in particular, expecting no response, but I knew that there was only one response one could give. For me, there was only one person I could ever call family. What a load of nonsense, I murmured in the usual way.